Will you pray with me? Gracious God, each of us comes to this place bringing our unique experiences of messy, unpredictable family life. Guide us as we seek to better understand your messy family. By your Spirit, give us a sense of your boundless hospitality. Open our hearts to your invitation to take our place at your table, regardless of our flaws and imperfections. Amen. When I was a child, after the family finished eating dinner together, and the table was cleared and the dishes were washed, we'd sit in the living room watching TV until it was time for bed. My siblings and I didn't get to choose which shows we were going to watch. That privilege belonged to my dad. We didn't have the option of retreating to our bedrooms to watch our favorite shows because the TV in the living room was the only one we had. Our options were watch what Dad wanted to watch or do something else. If you chose to watch, you were given the responsibility of getting up to change the channel as often as was needed. I recall watching shows like All in the Family, The Jeffersons, Dick Van Dyke, The Brady Bunch, Happy Days, and the Beverly Hillbillies. I had heard about shows portraying the perfect family, but I couldn't relate to those. I was accustomed to families who were imperfect and dysfunctional, families like mine. Let me tell you a little bit about my family. The family that is comprised of the Jordans, Rips, Wagners, Watsons, and Kirks. My family drank too much, smoked too much, argued too much, and cussed too much. In my family, there was bigotry, betrayal, divorce, mental health concerns, abuse, deceit, manipulation, favoritism, and exclusion. We were imperfect, but we loved getting together for barbecues and holidays, special occasions, weekends at the lake, and vacations on the coast. It didn't matter how many times we fought and got on each other's nerves. This was my family. A big, messy, imperfect, wonderful family. This is the family to which I belong. As a child, I didn't realize just how messy my family actually was. I used to think that the perfect family existed out there somewhere. A family with happily married parents who never fought. Children who always did what they were told without whining or talking back. A family that didn't have to sacrifice every month. A family that was always loving and affectionate. Eventually, I learned that a family without flaws does not exist. The perfect family is a myth. There are some who incorrectly think that the church is perfect, or that it should be perfect. However, when we read Scripture, we learn about God's big, messy, imperfect family. Let me tell you a little bit about God's family. From the beginning, when Adam and Eve were created, humankind rebelled against God. Through various ways, including a flood, God tried eradicating evil and sin from the human heart. But curse and punishment didn't work. So God decided to try blessing instead. God entered into a covenant with one individual, Abram, later renamed Abraham, known as the father of the Jews. Unlike most covenants or contracts, which relies on the faithfulness and action of both parties, the faithfulness of this covenant was completely dependent on God's actions and faithfulness, and not on Abraham's accomplishments or worthiness. Abram was chosen by God, not because of who he was, but on who he would become. God intended to bless this one person who would then be a blessing to all of the families on earth. In Hebrew, blessing signifies flourishing, which includes physical strength and energy, fertility, security, and success. God explained to Abram, I'm going to do all of this for you in order for you to do all of this for others. I'm going to make you a great nation with as many descendants as the sand in the ocean. When he was 75 years old, an age when many of us have comfortably settled into retirement, God told Abram to leave everything and follow God. He was to leave his land, family, and father's household. He was to abandon the security of his homeland as well as his family and social support. He was called to go into a new country, though he had no idea where he was going. He was being asked to rely on God and God alone. Abram, his wife Sarai, and nephew Lot set out as instructed. When they were about to enter into Egypt, Abram insisted that his wife tell the Egyptians that he was Abram's sister and not his wife. When Pharaoh saw how beautiful Sarai was, he took her into his own household to become his wife. Self-centered Abraham lied, endangering his wife in order to protect himself and to acquire servants, donkeys, camels, and cattle. Abraham and his nephew Lot became quite prosperous in Egypt. They continued along on their journey until they arrived in Bethel, but they had so many livestock that the land couldn't support all of them, which resulted in conflicts between the two families, so they decided to part ways. Bickering and fighting, resulting in family separation. Years passed by, and Abram and Sarah remained childless. So Sarai took matters into her own hands, instructing Abram to have a child with her servant Hagar. Now, if you suspect that this story will not end with everyone living happily ever after, you would be right. Because once Hagar becomes pregnant with Ishmael, she showed contempt toward her mistress Sarai, who then treated Hagar harshly, causing her to run away. God convinced Hagar to return, promising her many children. Abram was 68 years old when Ishmael was born. Abraham and Sarah's son Isaac was born 14 years later. That's when Sarah became jealous of Ishmael and refused to share the inheritance between him and her son Isaac, as she forced Hagar and Ishmael into the desert to fend for themselves. God's messy family doesn't end there. Isaac married Rebekah, and they had twin sons, Esau and Jacob. Isaac loved Esau more, and Rebekah loved Jacob more. Siblings competing for their parents' love and attention. Jacob, at his mother's insistence, deceived his father and received a blessing that was meant for Esau. Esau was livid about his brother's dishonesty and planned to kill his brother. But their mother quickly sent Jacob off to Canaan to live with her side of the family. God's family is like our families. It's a family that includes people who lie, cheat, steal, and betray one another. They bicker, fight, and deceive. They're manipulative, conniving, and self-centered. These are the people who break God's heart. And these are the same people whom God delights. This is the family that God grieves over when they impose evil upon one another. And this is the family whom God cannot let go, because we share in the divine breath that God breathes into each of us when we are created. Members of God's family are ordinary people, and they are remarkably special. In all of our brokenness and sinful behavior, we still belong to God's big, messy, imperfect family. A family in which we can find meaning and purpose, to be a blessing to others, so that all of humankind can flourish in life. Jacob Armstrong, the author of God's Messy Family, says that the goal of family isn't perfection, it's connection. It's belonging in a world that tries to separate and exclude. Everyone wants a place to belong, a place where we are welcomed, accepted, and loved, with all of our faults, quirks, weaknesses, and limitations. Each of you belong to God's family. It's a big, messy family. It's imperfect and it's dysfunctional. God's family will at times drive you absolutely crazy. And God's family will be there for you when you need them. It's a family to which you belong, even when you are broken. A family where you can be exactly who you are and know that you are loved. It's a family where you can find meaning and purpose. And it's a place where there will always be a seat at the table just for you. Let us pray. Amazing God, we are so grateful that you have invited us to be a part of your family. Just as you told Abraham and Sarah that their names would be great and all people on earth would be blessed through them, help us to live into our names. By your Spirit, lead us on this journey to be a blessing to others.